Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.
Hello, this is Will Your Werewolf, and this is Werewolf the Podcast, and this is the third part of Werewolf vs Vampires. Yes, I know, delicious tropey tropeness. Please go back and listen to the last two episodes. If you haven't already done so, then this will make more sense. I'm just going to crack on. Well, that went better than I thought it would. I mean, it was all bloody and snotty and stuff. There was a lot of violence and pain and death and I suppose undeath. I had been bravely running away. Yeah, I know running away is not the bravest of things that I can do, but if you listen to the last couple of videos with the vampires, you know it was not going too well for me. I had killed a vampire. This kind of shit does not happen very often. I mean, the killing of a vampire does not happen regularly at all. You think it would happen a lot more often, wouldn't you? I mean, vampires in the movies are pretty good at allowing people an excellent sort of chance to kill them. They've all sorts of things available in their big, dingy castles. The walls are covered in weapons and the curtains are always loosely drawn over large windows, ready to be pulled down at a moment's notice to let the sunlight in. Can vampires not tell the time? There again, I've not really seen many vampires with watches on. You would think that they could sense the sun coming out or something, but no, they wander up to a window in their evening wear and risk all. Do they purposefully put things in the castle to create religious symbols and things? The candlesticks are big and dribbly, but you can cross them to form a crucifix really well. They tend to live alone in a huge motherfucking castle where their only protector is some mental hunchback type figure who looks like he can't fight off a cold, never mind a large crowd of people with agricultural implements and fire. Having said all this, the world's vampires do not die very often in reality. I mean, I know the reality that there are vampires in the world is a little difficult to believe as a reality, but in this reality, vampires die very infrequently. Having said all this, I'd killed one. This one, I believe, was not coming back in any way. I believe ripping his head off had meant that the undead one was proper dead, or proper undead, or... It's difficult to think that an undead thing can die. Can it die if it's I'm not sure, but it was not, it wasn't breathing anymore, if it was not able to exist. Hey, I'm not sure what it was, but it was no longer a thing. Well, that thing was the brother, and I found out brother, who was also her lover to a very violent and upset sister of his. Aye, who knew that the vampire nation had a thing that incest was all okay? I know the ancient Egyptians liked to keep it in the family in the past, so they didn't, pollute the bloodline of the gods, but vampires seem to be brother fuckers too. Now the vampire-ess, I am sort of assuming her gender, which is tricky with these, as I've mentioned before, Anne Rice androgynous mother lovers, but I will guess that she is female. I mean, she really looked female. I'm sorry if I've offended you by assuming the gender of the bitch, but it seems that the fact that she was trying to kill me was far above the offence that I could create by assuming her gender. Hey, before you go off on one, I am bisexual and a member of the LBGTQ plus ANFDYXZ community, so I know what it feels like to be persecuted and stuff for how I think. Well, that is utter bollocks, to be honest. I'm just a sexual monster who is a greedy fuck who will shag anything if he gets the chance to. I mean, within reasonably wanted tendencies, I still have, very profound preferences that I will not go into right here. That would be a few thousand words in itself. I may have talked about it before, but I cannot remember if I have. Where is this shit going, you may be asking? I know, I started with being hunted by vampires. How did I get to my sexual preferences? I'm not sure. Oh yeah, I had murdered the vampire's lady's lover, and she was super upset that I had done so. If you've not listened to the original story, then go back and listen to the two vampire stories before. I know trope, vampires and werewolves, but this is real trope, real reality trope. Ever think why there is a link between werewolves and vampires? Well, if you listen to the folklore, it was thought that werewolves would become vampires if they were killed. The Greeks were big on this. The werewolf would die, and if the body was not burnt, the vampire would be raised in the form of a hyena or wolf. That creature would then drink the blood of those soldiers who had fallen on the battlefield. This shows no animosity between Fur and Fang, but it does offer an original but very wrong link between the two things in the past. The first place I can find there being a fight between wolf and vamp was in the movie Vampire vs. Wolfman. It was a very crappy bad movie, but it was the first when the two ancient creatures went into a kind of war. That was kind of a cool, in a Pulp Fiction manner thing. Then it continued in things like Underworld series and all that kind of stuff, and I hate to say it because it hurts me. Twilight. After that, the Vamps vs Werewolves thing got out of hand, and to be honest, it was never an issue between us before. I mean, the bloodfuckers and the furry motherfuckers never really bothered with one another. They both realised that there was no point in doing so. Meeting a vampire was a rarity. I mean, there's only 74 werewolves in the world, so a vampire meeting a werewolf was pretty much a rarity. And I'd never met one in my memory, and Fen had only met one in all his years. It was actually the one that was trying to kill me now, apparently, and that meeting had not gone too well before, but he'd not gone into any details, which meant it must be bad. Back to the story. This woman had then decided that she wanted to up her hunting for some reason. Her and her brother had been in Tokyo when I had been on my holidays there. I mean, they'd pretty much ruined it by walking in on me having a small Japanese meal and starting a fight. They told me all the bollocks they now wanted to do to me because I would be a better sport than their human prey. They did that thing that the overconfident do in these situations and talked about everything they were going to do to me, a rookie mistake. But I followed my one rule in life. The rule is that I would always retaliate first in every situation I encounter. Having that in mind, I removed the boy vamp from his own mind. I'd ripped his head off. Well, that is if you assume that the mind is in the head. There are a lot of philosophers out there who spend a lot of time thinking about where the mind is in the body. Even if it is in the body, is it a soul and such? I mean, what I needed to do was not remove the mind, but remove the head. To make a vamp dead, remove its head. Most things die if you remove their head. That was almost like sort of Vanilla Ice level rapping, wasn't it? Sorry. Well, I'd removed his head, and that had pissed her off a lot. She had got all but hurt about it and had become the BDSM bitch from hell, looking like a 50th level female warrior elf from one of those strange role-playing games where the fat guys with neckbeards pretend that they are some sort of hot elf woman so that they can fill their wank bank with weird content. She tracked me down in one of my favourite places in the world, Gay Lane in Manchester. The street was Canal Street and was the gayest place in Manchester and always fun to walk along and meet new friends. It was like an all-you-could-eat buffet of creatures of different feather or leather or latex or denim. I mean, you could get any of 100 flavours here. Not just gay men, gay women, there would be straight men, straight women, there would be any mixture that you can think of. There was a lot of hetero women here because they feel particularly safe amongst the men who do not want them. I was different. I liked them all. And fag hags would be on my list of things to do quite happily, and all the members of the alphabet community as well. The vampire bitch from hell had linked my arm as I'd walked past the Velvet Hotel. It's a very nice hotel, by the way. This is the hotel at the centre of the road. I once stayed there and took a black light in with me. You know what a black light makes glow. This was to see the arts that the hotel would be full of. Can you imagine the Jackson Pollock nature of all the walls and all the surfaces? Even the curtains glowed with spunky delight. Lovely, glowy, dried, spunky orgasms highlighted by blacklight. little moments of death. Ugh. We'd not gone into the hotel, which, to be honest, she wouldn't have had to try hard for me to do. We had wandered up the road arm in arm while she threatened me with a very sharp knife. She'd put a hole in my favourite jacket and introduced me to 8 of her friends that were there to make my life difficult and somewhat short. Like I said at the start of the story, I'd run away. I got into a spiritualist meeting in a big hall. The man was the mighty or great or fantastic or excellent Phil, and he had seen the souls that I had killed through my years. It had broken him, or almost broken him. I didn't really hang around to see. I always thought that this talking to the dead thing was bullshit, or that these fuckers were mentally ill, but it turns out that Phil was the truth. He met all my past victims who were moaning about me killing them. Jesus, I wish they'd get over it. They're dead. There's nothing they can do. That was the end of that story and where we should be now. Sorry I had to go over that. I didn't really have to go over that if you listen to the first 2, but I like to do these things every now and again. I was in the now emptying hall as all the people did the best thing that they could for them, which was to do what I was doing, which was to run away. There was only me and 8 vampires left. As before, I could tell that they were vampires. They were just charismatic and cool, evil bastards, a cross between the styling of Matrix movies and the high-quality BDSM clothing that you can, never afford. So I'm getting back to the story start almost at its end. I ran. I turned into the wolf and I ran. It was going so well. I hit the fire exit door at top speed and it bounced open to reveal one of my favourite things in the world. It was an empty alleyway. No one was about. I had my chance to run. I turned left and set off when a vamp landed in front of me. He wore a long white latex jacket, he had sunglasses on in the dark, and the 2 requisite fucking samurai swords that the vamps needed to fight with. I mean, they only choose the coolest things to fight with. Samurai swords were a bit cliche even for me though. The lady vamp, who was genuinely the best looking goth chick that I'd ever seen, had like these organic mini sort of H. Geiger broadswords. That was cool. Katanas. I ran to a halt where he was blocking my path, and as I did so, I changed back to my human form and stood in front of him with my arms crossed. He held his cool pose for a little too long while I watched him. I think he wanted to put a bit of fear into me, but already realised that he was trying too hard. He was not natural to this shit. I am the Rekiva Wolf. I am to stop you and hold you for Drinja, the Black, and her lost brother Val. I will hold you so she can get her revenge. I might have to stop you by removing parts from you, but that will be your choice. He snarled, showing his fangs and shit and taking up a pose that he thought looked dramatic and stuff. Derekiva? I asked him. Wait, Derekiva? Were you called Derek before you were a vamp? You're not a born vampire, huh, Derek? Fen wandered up behind the vampire, laughing in a very wolfy way. He loved taking the piss out of anything that took itself seriously. We, as a pair, hardly ever did anything seriously apart from our riot. That was my last name, the name before I was reborn. I am the Rekyava. No, mate, you're called Derek. Derek? Derek the vampire. Fuck's sake, that is the saddest thing that I've ever heard. Derek the vampire. Hey, that's not such a bad thing, but it must really fuck with your ego, huh? You being called Derek and trying to be a cool vampire. I mean, look at you with your cool aviators and your, what's that, white latex full-length jacket and your katanas and shit. You look, well, let's not say cool because that would be a bit of an out and a lie, but I can see you trying, and I'm sure that the other vampires do not take the piss out of you behind your back too much. Do you have like a cool vampire name on top of Derek, like a nickname? Perhaps you're like Derek via the Reaver or something. I burst into laughter at the great joke that I just amused myself with. He wasn't amused at all. He maintained his pose, but I saw the pain in his face, and it was fucking lovely. How did you guess, Wolf? He asked. How did I guess what? Pardon? How did you guess that I was named the Reaver? He continued. I shook my head in happy disbelief. What? I was right? Laughter overtook me entirely. Even vampires had a sense of humour that I could understand. Making poor Derek a vampire and a figure of fun. Derek the Reaver. Perfect. When were you actually turned, matey? This seems a very recent thing to my understanding. When was it? 2 months ago on Friday, he said. I had been waiting some 10 years, and they finally chose me to change because of my great work for the vampire community. 2 months on Friday? Shit, mate, that's like when a kid tells you that they're 6.5. I laughed. That wasn't so long ago, huh? What did you do for them then? I mean, what was the great work that you did for their community, I asked. I was linked to their business dynamics, he said. Is that your real accent? Okay, I smirked. What did you do? That really doesn't answer the question, I asked again. I was on the financial side of things. I nodded and left the pause, hoping that Derek, the vampire, would fill it. So, what was it you actually did? I asked again. He fell silent and gently shook in his maintained pose. I started tapping my foot impatiently and waiting. I was an accountant, he said. Fen and I started laughing like fuck. The coolest accountant in the fucking... A vampire accountant, I said sarcastically. Well, Derek, the undead accountant, we burst into laughter again. I'm afraid that you're in my way, and I will not chat with you for the next few minutes until your mates arrive to have me killed, I told him. I now smiled at Fen, and we decided we would get together and become the werewolf and do this vampire quickly. That way we could move on and not get held up for the scary Scooby Gang to get here. I knew that this person, Derek Yava, was here to slow me down and not stop me. Derek would never beat me. He couldn't, in my mind anyway, but he was going to try because imagine the kudos if he was the one who finished the wolf. Fen's and my own soul mixed. My body went from that of a very good-looking, incredibly fit and sexy human being to the werewolf equivalent. I was now a big, black, fluffy man-beast. I was terrifying as a black shadow against the light. Darkness being me. As the giant shadow before him swallowed the light from his world, apart from the amber eyes. Amber does not do them justice. The eyes looked as though a fire burnt behind them. A slight slit pupil was at their centre, while the rest burnt out of control. It held the cleansing flame that tears through the world and kills, cleans, and purifies. I started to growl. Growl does not really describe it adequately, and it's almost impossible to describe that growl in simple prose. It was as though reality was being torn and you could hear it. It sounded like souls being ripped from their life. Well, that might be a bit much. Let's just say it's proper scary. The shaking vampire was now obviously shitting his pants. Maybe not literally. Weird how you think about these things in the moment. Do vampires ever need a shit? I was already thinking about Googling it after this was over. I don't think it was appropriate to ask right at this moment. I think that I would just do an internet search after. I mean, he may not want a conversation about that right now, might he not? There now was that moment before violence. This is one of the most thrilling times for me in life. You know that there is going to be a fight for continuation, that you might not get any more moments after this one. It focuses everything in that tiny time frame, and that tiny time frame extends itself forward for what seems like a lifetime. He now lowered his blades to point to the floor and below him. His arms were outstretched. In my head I realized that Derek, maybe a Derek, but he had trained really hard with his swords not to be very Derek-like. He had trained so hard to respond to a world that had laughed at him as Derek, who was an accountant. I mean, we need lots of Dereks in the world, to be honest, to make it work right, but who the fuck wants to be a Derek? This one had done all he could to move on from being a Derek to being a Derekyava. He launched himself forward with a double upstroke of both blades, one aimed at my inner thigh and one at my right hand. He knew exactly where to attack. He was going to cut my femoral artery and remove one of my weapons with his first blow. I would be defeated in that first attack, and he would have long enough to talk to me as I died and bled out before him. Oh no, not an instant kill from this strike. He wanted to stand over me and tell me the error of my ways, belittle me and quote lyrical at me. This was his mistake, because I could live through awful wounds. They heal quickly and I'm back to full functionality fast. The sword sliced into my leg and blood burst from it and instantly sprayed like a black shower from the wound. The other removed my paw, which span into the air and fell at some distance from the body. That was where he'd made his mistake. He now did the thing of pausing in place in his striking stance and admired his work. This, for some reason, is the thing that people do who learn the technical martial arts without learning to actually fucking fight. He stood there with a smug grin for about a tenth of a second. That is, before I put my left paw through his face. Now, when I say through his face, I mean through it. His head shattered like an egg and sent blood and brain goop spraying into the night. As the head turned into liquid, I kicked the body with my good leg. The shin of the leg hit the ribcage of the vamp and travelled a few inches into the ribcage before the leg's momentum was transferred to the body, making it fly sideways and into the wall of the alley, where it slipped to the floor in a very uncool pile. He was proper undead dead now. I knew if I smashed or removed the head of a vampire, they were dead. This was well deaderer than before now, and judging by the nastiness on my hand, that head was proper fucking broken. I now reacted to the cut on my thigh and the loss of my hand. I have to say, both stung like a mother lover. The blood stopped gushing from my thigh, and after a few moments, the blood loss stopped. I walked now without a limp away from the fight and kept shaking my stump until suddenly a new hand flopped from it, and it took a few more moments to become a lovely hairy claw once more. I hopefully could now escape to fight another day. The times had changed. I was now going to hunt these fuckers. I would get them before me, and that bitch of a vampire would be mine to play with for as long as I could make her life miserable. I would destroy all those I had met that night who stood against me. That's the end of the episode. Hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to support the show, there's a link down in the description. If you would like to buy the book, there's a link down in the description. If you would like just to be my friend, you can join me on Facebook groups, because there's a link down in the description. And I've also got my Twitter handle down there if you want to twatter me. Love you loads, bye.
Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.